Alrighty, it looks like most folks are signed in at this point. I think we can go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking today from Tucson, Arizona, where the Sky Island Alliance office is located on the traditional lands of the Falna-O'odham, Pasquayaqui, and other indigenous peoples. I'm guessing that, like myself, you're all excited to learn more about these charismatic beetles. So I'm delighted to introduce our speaker for the day, Joe Cicero. Joe received his Master's of Science in Entomology from the U of A and his PhD in Entomology from the University of Florida. For more than 4 decades, Joe has been romping from one sky island to another, putting together the fauna of bioluminescent beetles. Joe is also a volunteer with Sky Island Alliance, and on a number of trips over the last couple of years, he has graced us with not only his bug knowledge, but his always exciting blacklight setup. If you're interested in seeing some cool bugs with Joe, keep an eye on our upcoming events and you might just get that chance. Like I said, as a reminder, we would ask you to stay muted throughout the presentation and to use the chat feature in Zoom to ask any questions you have there. Or similarly, if you're joining us on Facebook, you can put your questions into the chat there and we will we'll have time to answer those questions at the end. I guess without further ado, I will turn this over to Joe.
Well, thank you, Brian, and I'm happy to support the Sky Island Alliance and their fabulous efforts towards conservation and habitat preservation. Those of you from back east who grew up with fireflies often say that on moving on here, you wish they were here because you want your kids to see them also. It turns out I'm counting 22 different species of fireflies here in Arizona. We have 2 that fly and flash like the one in front of you right now. And we have a site selected where you can go with a great deal of safety and let the kids run with nets and collect fireflies and put them in bottles and streak them across their forearms as you will. So there's no problem there. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let's see what I've got for you. I got to hit the right button here. Page down. Why didn't it work? No, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Why are you not working?
If that's not working, you might try hovering over the bottom of your slide. And there's an advanced button over there on the left. Yeah.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah,
okay,
try that.
Good, let's do that. Okay, so fireflies can be extremely complex, but for the sake of the mixed audience that I expect I'm facing, let's do it as simple as possible and divide them into 3 behavioral groups. This is not taxonomic, it's behavioral. And that'll make things a lot easier for you folks to wrap your head around. There are 3. There are the day flyers. There are those species with flightless females like this one. Those black spots there, those are the elytra, the wing covers, which on normal beetles extend to the full length of the body. And on this one, they're very, very small. We call them epaulets. And the hind wings are tiny also underneath them. And we'll talk more about them later. The 3rd group consists of the winged flashers. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of them in Arizona, and 2 in particular, these 2 here in the Sky Islands, and they're just fabulous creatures. So with that introduction, let's move on to the next one. Let's knock out the larvae first and take care of them because all of them are very, very similar amongst the fireflies across the board. They're easy to recognize too because they have lights. There's one there and one there on the underside of the body, and there's fenestrations on the upper side so that those lights shine through to the dorsum. Here's another pair right here. They're not on right now, but those are the lights of the larvae. So that's one characteristic that identifies the larvae. Another one is a retractable head. You see this one? It looks like it has its head is missing. The head's down here, deep in the thorax. It pulls it back, and that protects it from getting bitten off, and also protects it from parasitoid flies. I think we don't have any data on that, but there's a parasitoid fly that enters the body this way, and its maggot feeds on the firefly larva internally. The third character is the prehensile anal proleg right here. It's a multifilamentous or multitubular affair with two branches on it, and apparently it's inflatable from hemocylic pressure. We don't have any data on that either. We just know they occur there and that they're unique to the firefly. They have a series of barbs on them like this, which allow them to grab a hold of just about anything, including this glass surface that is being photographed through. A real interesting, and they use this to groom themselves too. After feeding on snails, which they eat ravenously, they'll curl this thing up to their face and run these tubules through their mouth parts to clean them. It's not quite a toothbrush, it's more like a dental floss is what they're using it for. A very fascinating characteristic. They anchor down with this too, and can actually stand up on it. Their legs can leave the surface of the ground. Very remarkable creature. See how this one's holding on to the snail shell while it pushes its way through into the snail's tissue. It bites the snail, clamps down, and when the snail retracts itself, it holds its mandibles tight and lacerates the snail right there, and then starts lapping up the blood from the snail, and keeps eating until the whole snail is consumed. They get real fat and gorge themselves and then go hide under a rock and digest. So there you go. The lights turn on unpredictably and randomly as they walk. And that's also characteristic of the larvae. Apparently that's from peristaltic movements, but again, we have no physiology studies on that either. But that's how to recognize them. If they turn on and off randomly along a stream side as you're walking on the road, then it's a larva. Just be careful of snakes when you reach down to pick it up. Dorsally, you can see they're very characteristic also. The dorsal plates here are obtrapezoidal, as you can see, and there's the thorax. Here's the pro, meso, and metathorax are much larger than the abdominal segments, but it's that plate-like dorsal surface that's also a characteristic of the family. So having said that, let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's deal with the first group, the day flyers. These are easy to recognize. In fact, they're flying around your front yard, excuse me, because they were attracted to your irrigation systems, and they're probably laying eggs in there. And if you fertilize your lawn, you're killing them off. But they find a place to turn over the generations here in the urban settings, and they're very common in Tucson. When it rains, you'll see them flying around. It's a black speck flying in a straight line, like one or 1.5 yards above the ground. And then when you see that red in there, the red gives them away immediately. You can catch them in your hands and check them out. They're just harmless as can be. Here's another species of day flyer, and this one secretes a latex out of a gland here that's apparently unpalatable. We have no data on that either, but I imagine it is, just like monarch blood. I don't know. Here's still another one. This one was had a good colony up in Rustlers Park before it burned out, but they're still extant in Barfoot as well as lower down, wherever it's very deep in deep shade and along stream sides. This day flyer is very enigmatic. It's a very poor specimen. I've got to get more of them, but the drought has pretty well foreclosed their flight this year. I haven't seen any at all, and I'm worried they may be not way back. We're not see them for many years. Its female and larvae are totally unknown. No idea. I think it's flightless, also a member of that second group, but I've yet to prove it. It's another enigma, and I just love enigmas. I'm not chasing them most of my time. That's all I can tell you for the day flyers. So the other ones are far more complex. So let's go to the second group. Now here's an animation that'll help you understand the second group. The males fly looking for the female when the sun sets, and the females crawl from underneath a rock. There's one right there, and there's another one right there. They turn the lights on. Another one right there. The males see the light and drop down. This is what we call a glow-fine mating protocol. Let's have a look at one in particular here. This female crawls out from underneath a rock, looks to the left, looks to the right, whatever, puts on her shoes and socks, and starts marching off. Now there's that inchworm ambulation I was telling you about. She's not only flightless, but we call her larva form because she looks a lot like the larvae. In fact, flightlessness has very little to do with it. As you'll see later, it's the whole body that is immature relative to its male. They always position themselves like this so that the light faces upward, at least they try anyway. And it's actually on all the time. It intensifies right there when she's set with that posture. And all this text is from my website, which I'm trying to get up again. Google, in their infinite wisdom, dismissed Flash in my animation. This animation is based on Flash, so I disabled my website, but I'm trying to get it started again so that the whole thing can be reviewed. Okay, so let's move on to this next one, and let's go to some basics to understand what these flightless females are all about. There's an old saying that the caterpillar transforms into the butterfly during the pupal stage. And this, of course, is a misnomer. I hope you folks all know that it's just not true. Here's a classical life cycle here, fourth, fifth, or sixth. It depends on the species, and the next one is the pupa, and the next one's the adult, 1, 2, 3. It looks very convincing. It's convincing, but it's very, very wrong. There was even textbooks that called the pupa the metamorphic instar. That's misleading, of course, because sure, there's a lot of metamorphosis going on internally with muscle attachments and so forth for the wings and the legs. But I'm looking at the external morphology. I see wings, I see legs, there's a compound eye, mouth parts and so forth. They're all doll-shaped more or less because it needs some finishing touches. But it looks to me like in the beetles and the butterflies and moths, there's a wing right there. And the abdomen is compacted also. It looks to me like metamorphosis is already over with. So if it's already over with, then when did it happen? Well, back in 1946, that's a long time ago, Henry Hinton recognized what's going on. He called them concealed phases. And he called them ferrate because ferrate is Latin for concealed. And if you don't have the academic background to understand this life cycle, just consider snakes. Insects and snakes both outgrow their skin and have to shed it periodically. So the epidermal cells break away from the old skin, and while free, they undergo the development, the elaboration, the growth that is needed before rupturing the old skin and crawling out as a new instar. So these are actually molting events, each one of these. And they're called ferrate, but they occur on precede each and every instar, and right into the embryo too. There's skin shedding or exoskeletal shedding in the embryo of fireflies as well. The ferrate pupal stage actually precedes the pupa, and this is where all the action is. Most of metamorphosis occurs here, and by the time it graduates to the pupa, metamorphosis is over with. The ferrate adult and teneral adults, which we'll talk about in a minute, they are finishing touches. But by and large, by the time it reaches the pupal stage, it's got most of the external morphology in preparation for the adult. Having said that, we're going to need a lot of space here to elucidate the ferrate pupa, because lots and lots of things happen. The wings grow out with simple eyes. The ocelli on either side of the larva proliferate into compound eyes. The wings grow out, so on and so forth. After all that happens, you reach the pupa, and that's stasis of metamorphosis. It sits under a rock or wherever it is during inimical conditions like winter. When spring or summer comes, they move on to the ferrate adult. So if you see a pupa with color on it, it's no longer a pupa. It's now a ferrate adult because the color is coming from the presumptive adult inside the transparent pupal cuticle that hasn't been ruptured yet. This is just another instar, another skin shedding, but before the skin sheds, the pigmentation cascade begins. So when you see a pupa with color on it, it's not a pupa, it's a ferrate adult. I hope I didn't lose everybody on that. It's important to understand this in order to understand the flightless fireflies. So let's make this ferrate pupal stage much larger so that we can play around with it. Here, I've got degrees of maturation down. These are just arbitrary. As the thing grows up, it gets more and more mature. And this isn't time, this is elaboration of tissue. So let's hold that thought a minute and look at some of these larva forms. They're quite diverse. This is a collection that I chose from all over the world. Here is a non-larva form where the male and female both look alike, or at least look enough alike to be called monomorphic. But the dimorphism can be extreme, as you can see. Here, everywhere you go, the dimorphism is just like this one here from Chile is just incredible. But there's something else going on. This one here is another family, but that's not important either. This one here looks just like its larva. This one looks just like its larva also, except it doesn't have any color. This one looks like a pupa. It's got the wing covers started, and so does this one. So does this one. There's some tiny wing covers there. These look like adults. They're not quite there yet, but as you can see, they're starting to look more like adults. This is ontogeny. This is an ontogenetic phenomenon. It's not cladistics. They're not apomorphic. None of that stuff. Although they do have somatic mutations, they're picking up their ground plan, the primitive basal metamorphic program, which everybody shares throughout the globe. So let's take those and put them in order according to increasing degrees of dimorphism. We'll put the least dimorphic up here, most dimorphic down here, and everything else will fall in between. And you can see very clearly, this is from the larva to the adult, this is a gradation in maturation. As they get more and more mature, they start looking more and more like the males. Here, the wings start growing. This one doesn't have any wings at all. Here, the wings, well, this one and this one are about the same, but the wings, now some colors coming on, et cetera, et cetera. There's an old school of thought called ontogeny and phylogeny, which you biologists have certainly heard of. It's lost its way to developmental biology and developmental genetics, but it needs to be resurrected because these are the best examples of ontogeny and phylogeny in the animal kingdom. Now, you salamander people may disagree with that, but hear me out because you're in for some surprises. Let's move on here. Let's put these in order, in reverse order, actually, in that construct that I had you remember. And you can get a better glimpse at this. Now, here's the fifth instar. Metamorphosis to this. The endocrine system tells it to stop dead in its tracks. It then moves onto the pupa and onto the adult and skips all these stages. Similarly, let's say this one here, this is the European glowworm, Lampiris noctiluca, well known in textbooks. It elaborates or metamorphoses clear up to a little more than halfway through the full program experienced by the male. The endocrine system just stops it cold and tells it to move on to the pupa, ready or not, and then on to the adult as is. So what's happening here is the endocrine system, which does control metamorphosis. This is well known among your higher orders that the models are all based on, like Drosophila, Manduca, and so on and so forth. But it's the endocrine system is sending out its commands and manipulating juvenile hormone and ecdysone and all the other things I don't want to get into at this time, and telling these females to hit the brakes and stop growing up at certain points, depending on their physiology. We don't know much more than that, but we do know that this is an exploded metamorphic program that's scattered all over the world. And it's really quite amazing to see this so graphic and in this group. So let's learn some more about this. So here you go. This is a better way of looking at it. The degrees of dimorphism are now degrees of maturation. And as this thing metamorphoses, as each one metamorphoses, it picks up the somatic mutations that are activated at whatever point in the elaboration of tissue they occur. Some of them get this one, or all of them get this one, none of them get this one, and so on and so forth. We're not looking at somatic mutations. That would be cladistics. We're looking at ontogeny and phylogeny, where these females look more and more larval from one species to another until we see those that are almost done, not quite done, and then we see the ones that ostensibly have grown up to completion. So to further understand this, let's talk about maintenance of register. That's the most important concept that's missed by most comparative morphologists. This is a gadget I'm sure you're aware of. I didn't draw in the nose and the mouth, but it's a clever thing that can be used so that the witness can put characters in register with each other and the suspect can be identified. What the police don't know is that this is also a perfect model for understanding these females. So this is the blend tool of Corel. If you draw a square here and a triangle there and hit the blend tool button, it will generate these intermediates in the metamorphosis from one character to another. We can use this to represent any character on the body, whether it's eyes or wings or thorax or legs or what have you. Let's put the two together, and here's what you have in the way of maintenance of register. These verticals are all females. They're adult females, and in other words, post-pupal, and yet the characters that are more larval than the next female are in register with each other. As you can see, let's take this one for here. Right here, when you see that the eyes in this one are more larval than the eyes in this one, you'll see that the rest of the body is correspondingly more larval. So it's not just the eyes, it's the entire body. And the only thing controlling that is the endocrine system. If you see one here where the eyes are more imaginal than another one back here, you'll see the rest of the body is correspondingly more imaginal, and it's just as graphic as can be. The reason why they're poorly recognized is people are looking at just the eyes and the wings. The rest of the body is too complex for them, for the general coleopterist to follow. But I've written tutorials on this to show that the characters that you can see are intermediate and in register with the other characters that are that much intermediate too. I hope that I didn't lose you, but that's the best I can do in this short period of time. Importantly, this character here and this character here, a simple eye, is the same character. They look different because the other one's just more grown up than this one. This character here and this character here look different, but they're the same character. The difference is the one's more grown up than the other, and it's really that simple. Once you get that mindset, you can start recognizing that these characters maintain register from one female to another, and that's the explanation for invoking the endocrine system as it's an evolving endocrine system. In other words, it's changing and causing different females in different species to quit metamorphosis earlier. Fortunately, the reproductive system is the first thing to metamorphose. And so regardless of the rest of the body, she's reproductively capable of the male. And when she turns her lights on bright and pretty, the male doesn't care what she looks like. They just drop on down and mate with her. And that system has worked for what, millennia so far. So now let's look at some Arizona species with flightless females. Again, these are adult females, post-pupal. This one has simple eyes, and yet it has a retractable head, and it's got tarsal claws. It's got a mixture of adult and larval characters, but it's in register with other members of the family. Here are their mating behaviors. This one crawls out from underneath a rock, as I showed you before, and it tries to curl itself, but it doesn't quite do very well, and the body blocks a lot of the light from view of the males flying overhead. This one does a little better because it'll pull itself up. See how it hoisted itself up on this pine needle? It tries to get its lights past the anterior end of the body so that the males can see it better. This one is the smartest of all because it twists the abdomen laterally here so that there is no block. It's just not done twisting altogether, but it waves it back and forth for the male to recognize. And this is much superior. And I think it's evolutionarily more evolved than these guys here. And the morphology acquits this also. This is the male of this species, at least. The other males look just like this. They come to black light. You can pick them up and look at them, and they've got a pair of lights down here that they inherited from the larva that are not functioning in the mating protocol, but they carry them around nonetheless. This is the genus Microphotus, and they're very common. You'll see this one and this one here during the monsoon season. You'll see this one during the monsoon season, and this one comes out a little earlier. So here's some more Arizona flightless females. This is the larva of these guys here. And you will see this one commonly on Sabino Canyon. When I'm walking up the Sabino Canyon Road, people stop at this thing all the time when they stroll during the night and say, what's that? It's a glowworm. Well, you can call it a glowworm, but it's actually the larva of a firefly. Here's the female. She, again, quits metamorphosis early, turns on her lights, and the males come on down to mate with her. This is the male, and here's the pair of lights that the males carry around. As I told you before, they don't function in mating. Maybe as a predator avoidance tactic, we don't know. We don't know much about the histology of the things. It's not on the table because they're too hard to study, being nocturnal and so hard to raise. And the kinds of things that need to be done to study the histology of the larval lights in the adults are just not on the table for a long, long time. This thing has never been seen before. It hides this is the female of this guy, and she hides in her burrow. And I'm guessing that the antennae of the male are so modified to smell her first before they drop down and then see the lights and continue further in the mountain and mate with her. But I had to rear her out because I've never seen her out in the wild. And my guess is that she stays in her burrow. I guess that's what I'm saying. She stays in her burrow and lets the males smell her with these antennae and drop down and go into the burrow and see the lights and to complete the sex location and recognition. So here's still another one. Karen LeMay found this in her backyard and gave it to me. This is really excellent. Is it on? Okay, let's turn it on. Because it pulses its light. This is one of the smartest. It pulses its light like that, on and off and on and off. You tell for what it takes to get a male to come down and mate with her. This is really quite incredible because she is flightless. She looks like a pupa, but she's an adult female. This one is from Europe. I thought I'd throw this in because they have their own thing going on over there. This one twists the light over the body like a scorpion's tail. Instead of trying to twist it sideways, it just curls it over like a scorpion's tail so that the light is fully visible dorsally so that the males can best see it and fly down to her. Okay, so the third group are the winged flashers. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of species, but there's only two down here in the Sky Islands. This one here and this one here. This is the female of that one. So the male has some very big lights here, but the female has just this tiny light right where my pointer is pointing. These two specks are just reflections from the light of the camera, the flash of the camera. So this is all the female really needs. She just blinks and the male does all the work in the distance required to see the female's light. And the females are very shy and coy, and they will blink back at her if they like her and if they feel like it. They're very, very coy. Okay, so this is the Southwest Spring Firefly. We have a research team working aggressively on this species, so I'm not going to say anything more about it because they have, I gave them exclusive interest in the thing. This one, however, the synchronous firefly is commanding a lot of attention. It's down in Pina Blanca, and it's fabulous beyond belief. They synchronize their flashes in air and on the ground. And I'll get to those in just a second. Right now, let's talk about northern Arizona. Virtually nothing is known. We get reports and pictures on YouTube, but nobody will send me a picture. And so I don't know what they are, but they're up there nevertheless. This is the Big Dipper firefly, which you'll see in a minute. It used to be in central Arizona, like around Phoenix and the Salt River. This is its label, but we haven't seen it for many years. We don't know if it's got wiped out or not. We just don't know. There's a lot of work to be done up here. This is all virgin territory for firefly enthusiasts. This one's in New Mexico, and it might make its way into the Chiricahuas eventually. I don't know. It's a big mountain range. We haven't seen them yet, but it's quite possible it could get to the Chiricahuas and then over the Huachucas, and on we go. We'll see in the coming years. So these are the flash answer routines I started to mention. The males fly through the air and broadcast a species-specific pattern, like Morse code. This one's got 3 flashes every so often, 1 flash. There's a 2 flasher somewhere. There's a strober here. This is that Big Dipper firefly that draws a J in the night sky as it flies up the axis of the plant, like this one here, for instance. Real interesting things. This could be up in the Colorado Plateau, but we don't know yet because no one will send me a picture or send me specimens or put them in the museum, put them in the university collection so that they can be studied. And anyway, the flash answer routine involves the male flying through the air, hoping a female will see him. The females are sitting on the ground looking up, and if they see a flash pattern they recognize as this a male of their species, and if they like it and if they feel like it, they'll flash back at him. He then drops down from the sky and asks, where are you, and then triangulates and finds her and lands to mate. That's the flash answer routine. This Southwest Spring Firefly I mentioned does a complex flash answer routine, but again, we have a research team on this right now, so I won't say anything more there. This guy, the Southwest Synchronous Firefly, a fellow named Raphael Sarfati came down to test that synchrony, and he was able to determine by a statistical algorithm that yes, they are synchronizing in the air. And the reason why there's some disruption of synchrony is because other males are joining these males to see what's going on. And when they start flashing out of synchrony, it messes up everybody else's synchrony. But the synchrony is still present. This is really a fabulous thing to see. And it's down there in Pina Blanca. When these things get done with this, they settle down on the ground and form a congregation. The congregation is what we call a lek, L-E-K, and it assembles in a tight, let's see. Well, here's some more pictures of it and outbursts of populations. This is an excellent year. Many years ago, Scott was able to photograph these things in Amado by the thousands. This would have been a great year. I wasn't there, unfortunately. This is down in Canelo Hills. This is that other species, the spring firefly, beg your pardon. It's got one flash here, whereas the one in Pina Blanca has 3 flashes. This is just great. The kids have got to see this stuff. It's just fabulous. So here's an arena, a lek. It's a tight congregation that the synchronizing firefly gathers into. This is the upwardly projected boundary of the arena that the males fly to, the male altitude, in other words. They fly up high, and when they see activity down there, they'll sometimes survey it. They'll go and zigzag all over the place with extremely bright lights to set off the entire arena, which then blinks back at him. And when that happens, he sees dark areas in the arena, and they fly to the dark area because that's where females are more likely to be. The reason why they're more likely to be in dark areas is because these males are flashing back at him, knowing, which means that they don't know of any female in their view, because if they did, they wouldn't be flashing at the male, they would be chasing the female down. So this is how males find dark areas in the arena and fly into them. So down on the ground, there's a lot of grass and leaves and rocks and so forth. In most cases, well, first of all, the arena is in a blackout, total flash cessation for a long period of time, as males wander around in there looking for a female. Then every once in a while, a male gets horny and sets off with a triplet of light, a triplet of flashes. When he does that, if there's another male in direct eye shot to him, this other male will blink back at him. And then a third one will see that and blink back at him, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. And this entrainment races around the ground looking like a miniature lightning bolt. It's incredible to see. We're going to try to get this on video this year. So here's a graph of the timing that, as best I could do. I didn't have sophisticated electronic equipment to get this down, but we're going for that this year. So here, the first one flashes here, the one that gets horny and says, "Where am I?" And the second one flies after that, or flashes after that, and the third one answers fourth, fifth, sixth, so on down the line. Then there's the interval between the flashes here, between the triplets. The initiator here, the first one, flashes again, and this time all the ones participating will phase shift backwards in an attempt to achieve synchrony with him. They don't quite make it, but the synchrony, the phase shifting is accurate enough to give 3 lightning bolts instead of just 1. In other words, the first lightning bolt is the first flash of the triplet. The second lightning bolt is the second flash of the triplet. And the third is the third flash of the triplet. So it starts out going one long zip, and then it goes zip, zip, zip. And then in the third phase, synchrony is achieved. And so all the participants blink 3 times and then quit during the non-flash interval, and then they do it again. And then at that point, they start walking away in the direction of darkness. They don't walk towards each other because the mere fact that they're both participating means that there aren't any females in their eye shot. So this gives them a clue as to where females are more likely to be. And so they start marching off perpendicular to the axis of this entrainment in the direction of darkness. So each male is giving at least 2 other males information reciprocally. And I interpret this as reciprocal altruism. It's a phenomenon that was recognized by a man named Trivers many, many years ago, where males share information to at least get parity of opportunity to find females. And it works. It's been working. So it's reading the tea leaves. Because they do this and tell each other information and then walk in the direction of darkness, it's a system that works. So let's continue on. Okay, this is where to find them. those of you, like I said, from the east want to take their kids out to see the fireflies, the best place is Pina Blanca, right here in red, because there's a road there. It's clear and well groomed, where they can run after fireflies safely during the night. They shouldn't be romping around in the canyon itself because, well, there's snakes and so forth. There's big rocks, things to trip over. There's mimosas, acacias, and cacti and so forth. But this is the best place we've been able to find at the White Horse Campground. There are motels in Green Valley. That's about a 2-hour drive to the White Horse Campground. So you want to plan on a motel unless you think you can drive home at 11 o'clock, which I've done myself, of course. Get off at Pina Blanca Road. There's a gas station, a pilot gas station right there, and go west till you reach the T. You turn right to get to the lake. Don't do that, turn left. And it's right around the corner, you'll see the White Horse Campground. You'll see my blacklight very likely if I'm there, and you'll see fireflies all over the place. That would be in the coming weeks. The monsoons are just now getting started. I left you an email, arizonafireflies@gmail.com, which you can write to ask extended questions if you want, and get reports on the status quo of the Pina Blanca firefly, so that you can come out and see it, bring the kids, bring nets, and have a good time. So let's now talk about ecology, which and preservation, which the Skyline Alliance focuses on. This congregating species faces serious dangers. There's drought, which we already know about. There's not much we can do about that. Hydrological modification, the bulldozers came in and put in culverts, and that did some damage to the population. That was years ago. If they leave it alone, things will get back to normal. Off-road vehicles are just terrible. They'll run up and down the stream bed that these things survive in, and with these monstrous trucks just going over these giant rocks and so forth, and it's their kicks. But they wreak havoc on the ecosystem and all of the biodiversity in these sensitive ephemeral streams. Another possibility is the specialized predation. I mentioned that one in New Mexico that might move into Arizona. If it gets a hold of these congregations, the males will be sitting ducks, because this firefly eats the males of other species. And I don't see any reason to think that Lex can still survive the onslaught of this kind of predation, because these things will come in and then eat one male after another and wipe them out. This may happen, I just don't know. They could also be moving up from Mexico, from the Sierra Madre Occidental. We don't know, but we do know with the advent of this predaceous firefly, the lekking system will come to an end. I think that concludes the fireflies. Yeah, let's go to some associated families that luminesce. These are glowworms. The fireflies are fireflies, and glowworms are glowworms. These are beautiful things, and they occur right here in southern Arizona, as well as in California, and in Texas, and in New Mexico. This is the adult female here, and that's the male mating with her way down there. Again, the males don't care what she looks like, as long as the pheromone's right. And this one doesn't glow during mating, but it works with pheromones, and you can see the antennae are well designed for that. These glowworms feed on millipedes almost exclusively, as far as we know. We haven't seen them eat anything else. They decapitate the millipede and then start hollowing out the diplo segments all the way down and come out the other end and glean it thoroughly. Often out in the field, you'll see clusters of millipede segments in a pile of dehydrated. That's because one of these fin goaters got to it, ate it, and then moved on it. I didn't mean to do that. Like I said, these are the males. This one here is one of the tiniest we have. This is its actual size here, but it's a glowworm male nonetheless. And it has a little light in its brain, another light in its thorax, another one at the base of the abdomen, and still more along the sides of the abdomen. Yeah. No, we don't know. We don't know what's going on there. We don't know if there's some metabolic advantage to them, or whether they're just there and ATP is cheap. We don't know what's going on. But these things here, they glow very brightly too when they come to the black light. All you have to do is pick it up off the sheet. The thing will light up brilliant, yellow light like these glowworms here. To find these, you have to drive around countryside roads with the headlights off or with just parking lights and watch for the glows along the roadside. Then you can stop, probe the foliage around for any snakes, and then bring it in, take it home. The kids and your friends will love it. Here's one here, this next one, that keeps most of its lights off while it's walking and until it gets disturbed. So I poked it here somewhere along the line, and it lights up. This is aposomatic. In other words, it's a scare tactic. A scare tactic that is defensive. It's anti-predator tactic. And so they're getting away with this stuff. If you imagine this in underground lighting up, then it certainly is a deterrent because light isn't supposed to burst out like that. So, and this is right up here in Madera Canyon. The good strong monsoon rains, they should be coming out. And that'll be in a couple of weeks, I guess. Hope so. I think that's all, Brian. I think. Oh, yeah, there's one other. There's the click beetles. The click beetles are a huge family, but there's a couple, 3 genera that have lights here on their prothorax. They don't blink. They glow continuously. And so you'll see them streaking around in the forest amidst trees. And they look actually like a hiker coming down a mountain trail with its flashlight on. They really do. And chasing them down to catch them is quite a trick. You have to be very careful that you don't hurt yourself because they can be fast and maneuverable too. So just wait till one flies up on the road where you can catch it. You'll see them at Pina Blanca, you'll see them at Carr Canyon, Miller Canyon, and on we go. It's just a matter of stopping and getting out at night and or driving slowly with your headlights off or your parking lights on and watching for these things in the forest. This is still another one here, the long lip beetles. This is one of the most enigmatic beetles in the lore because the males have these real long maxillary and labial pouts. We don't know what they're doing. Maybe they flog the female with them or something, but the females are totally unknown for the entire family. The larvae are totally unknown for the entire family. And these are very common here in the Sky Islands. They come to blacklight readily. But I haven't been able to find the females either. I don't know what they're doing. But I've developed some tactics to try to find them. I've got some ideas. It may take several years. But this thing is really enigmatic. It's got me very curious about its mating behavior because these palps must be involved in that system, I would think. Nothing else makes any sense to me. I think, Brian, that's all. Thank you for your time and your interest. I'm happy to entertain in the, that was about an hour. That was 45 minutes, like you said. And okay,
yeah.
Well, to you, Brian, thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. And we do have questions coming in, and anyone who has questions, please start throwing those in the chat.
Or you can go to ArizonaFireflies@gmail.com. That's the Firefly headquarters for questions and comments and observations as well. Okay, go on.
Well, one question off the bat is, what can people do to protect fireflies? You mentioned not fertilizing lawns, but are there other things we can do? And is light pollution an issue with fireflies?
You bet it is. I meant to put that on. In fact, thank you. I meant to put light pollution on because it certainly has a dampening effect on these mating protocols. As far as the one in the city, it's an urban insect that flies down from the forest up above. The skylands up above. There's not much you can do about protecting them. So if you don't fertilize and they start breeding in your irrigation system, your sprinkler heads, in other words, down to the neck of your sprinkler heads, where they're, in other words, if a snail fauna can develop down there and they do lay eggs, then that's fine. Their offspring will fly over to your neighbor where the neighbor does spray insecticides and fertilize too. So there's not much hope for the urban fireflies, but they're also out in the forest, in the canyons, and you'll see them doing the same thing they do down here. They're just extremely prolific. So there's not much we can do about that except be aware that they're another species that the urban represents a black hole for their dispersal. Okay, so what else do we have?
So one thing I thought was interesting, you were talking about the larva eating snails, and I was just wondering, do all the firefly larvae eat snails? Do they eat snails exclusively, or are there other things they feed on as well?
Well, we don't know that for sure. We know that the observations are like 99.99% on snails, and they're ravishing to them. They eat the whole thing. They go deep into the shell and take every last scrap out of them. Now, when they're underground, they may bump into a grub or a worm or what have you, and they may eat that. We don't have that kind of data. I remember one trying to bite some flesh off of carrion, off a dead bird that was virtually almost gone, but it was still biting into it to get protein. So all we know is that most of your observations are this ravenous behavior with snails. In fact, they're adapted to bite into the snail's foot and hold tight while the snail retracts and ends up lacerating itself on the mandibles of the larva. And then they soak up that blood and continue lacerating further until the snail dies. And at that point, they consume the whole thing. They have extraoral digestion, of course. I hope that answers your question. So
yeah, it does. And
yeah,
a related question I had is, do the adults, like across all these different species, do the adults typically feed as well? And are they still carnivorous as well? Or
no, just the carnivorous ones. It's a genus, the genus Photurus, that feeds on other fireflies. They're specialized predators. They cue in on the flashes of their prey and grab them and eat them. And there's a record of adults feeding on pollen too, but that's over in Jamaica. And as far as I know, here in the United States and here in Arizona, there aren't any fireflies aren't eating anything. They're all relying on their stored adipose from the larval stage.
Okay. We have a question from the Flagstaff area wondering what would be the best way to try and find fireflies up there. Are there particular areas you think it'd be worthwhile to look, things like that?
That we don't know. There's a report that I believe from Jacob Campground at the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Otherwise, potential habitats are those that look good, that don't look disturbed or damaged or have a stream running through them. Of course, you do need the stream because you need the snails that they feed on. So I really can't answer that up there. But drive at night. You don't have to have your headlights off like I do. You can use turn them on and off or whatever you can do. If you're out on a lonely country road, you should be able to just use your parking lights and just keep your eyes open for luminescence. Any one of the second or third group may be up there. And watch YouTube, right? And what are they called? The community blogs. If some people are mentioning seeing fireflies at one of your parks or one of your wild areas up by Flagstaff, go check it out. But if you find one, take a picture of it and send it to me so I can identify it, take some specimens and get them into the Arizona State University up there in Flagstaff. Because nothing so far, there could be a new species, we don't know. nothing so far has been verified except that Big Dipper firefly, and it has been missing for quite a few years now. Okay.
When you say take pictures, are there specific, like, is there a specific angle or thing you're looking for in those pictures?
The dorsum would be fine. That's the best we can do. And if it turns out to be an actual firefly and not something else that landed on the leaf next to the firefly, that photographers can do that too. The layman, that is, they'll see a firefly land and then they'll go up to the plant and there'll be another kind of beetle on the leaf next to it and they'll take a picture of the wrong bug. Anyway, if you're sure it's a firefly, or you think you're sure, just take a picture of its dorsum and send it to that email. And I'll let you know if it is one or not. And I'll probably come on up and reconnoiter that report.
Okay. One thing, I think I know the answer to this, but you kind of glossed over a bit the day flyer group. Did those day flyers bioluminescent as well, or do they just not bother since they're
well, if you're old enough to remember those wristwatches with that we used to paint radium on the notches so that you could read time at night. That's illegal now. They've taken that off the market, of course, for some very good reasons. But these day flyers, if they have lights, they occur as tiny, tiny specks of light, about no brighter than those radium, the notches on the radium wristwatch. And those, again, are inherited from the larvae, but they're dysfunctional. And we don't know anything more about them. You'll have to take them into your tent, adjust your eyes to the darkness, and you'll see them glowing from those two spots on the tip of the abdomen ventrally. Now they're using pheromones, and the day flyers are using pheromones and visual to find mates and recognize each other.
Okay. We also have a statement here, Eric saying that they've seen or heard of fireflies being seen at the Gila Box and at the Blue River in eastern Arizona.
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it. It's a matter of getting on over it at the right time. See, it's a long ways away, and very likely, if I don't have a date on it so that I can, drop what I'm doing and get out there, then I'll drive out and miss them. It's a long way. It's a big investment, and that's why northern Arizona is so unknown, uncharted. However, the number of firefly aficionados has grown over the years. And we've got quite a few that are actually going out and looking for these populations. And some of them may be in my audience right now, to verify them and record them, because we're very interested in the risk of extinction to these species. So there you go. So take a picture of it and send it to arizonafireflies@gmail.com. And if it turns out to be one that's remarkable, then yeah, if I can, I'll jump in my car and go find it, or I'll contact the other aficionados, and maybe someone will be able to check it out. If not this year, then next year. But we do need those records.
Yeah. Yeah, we have another Rachel Laura saying that they've seen fireflies at Tonto National Monument near Roosevelt Lake in 2008. But it sounds like if folks want to help, then they should be taking pictures, get out there, take pictures. And the email you're saying is Arizona spelled out, or is it?
arizonafireflies@gmail.com. And
right.
But one trick, speaking to that question, if you have a net, or somehow use your hands or use a baggie or something, if you can catch a thing, put it in a vial and put it in the refrigerator, or just let it dry out. It doesn't matter. The specimen will still be identifiable as long as it's not crushed up. And you can get it to a local collection or what have you, or at that point you can get it home and take a picture of it, a nice sharp picture, instead of trying to catch a picture of it while it's active. And that's rather hard to do. It takes a lot of patience. if you can catch it, you can bring it home and then put it on a table at home and take a sharp picture of the thing and send that to that email. That would work.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing a whole lot of other questions at this point. I'll just scroll back through here, but yeah, I appreciate that. Is you have mentioned that the monsoons are kind of necessary for these big flights, and do you have a sense of like how long into the monsoon, how much rain we really need to see these?
No, I don't. What I'm hearing is what I thought was pre-monsoon. Others are saying it's monsoon started early, and if it starts early, it might end early. I don't know. It's all superstition. I don't have any information on that. I just know that the span of time between now and late August is going to be the best. And if you keep an eye on, or if you give me your email on my email, I can tell you when the conditions are optimum. And at that point, you don't have to drop what you're doing and fly up and go flying down there with your family. What you can do is just wait till the next weekend or what have you, and it should be okay. The moon is important also, but many nights when the moons are out, the clouds are also out, and all you have to do is block the moon with clouds and in order for them to resume their flight. But when the moon shines, they stifle their activity, and so they'll just crawl back under the leaf litter and turn themselves off. So that's the story there. You can keep in touch with me by way of email, and I'll let you know when the optimum time is for the Pina Blanca Firefly.
Well, Joe, we really appreciate you giving this talk today, and I want to thank everyone who showed up here to partake in our coffee break. Thanks a lot, and please do check out our website, our event page, to keep up to date on everything we have going on. We've got that linked here in the chat, and once again, if you see fireflies, get pictures of fireflies, or if you want to stay up to date on firefly activity, you can reach out to that email, arizonafireflies@gmail.com, to get in touch with Joe. So thank you all very much.